Cynthia was referred to as the Queen of Lagos because of her beauty that was difficult for successful young men to ignore. She was the taste of young billionaires who often go for high taste, but she never knew that this same beauty would put her in trouble and the door to her endless pains. When Cynthia left her poor village that morning, waving goodbye to her parents, her father, a church pastor, had prayed for her, asking God to protect her in the big city. Her mother gave her a small bag of roasted groundnuts and 2 bottles of water, telling her to be careful. But Cynthia wasn't afraid. She believed her beauty was her ticket to a better life. As the bus crawled into Lagos, Cynthia looked out of the window with wide eyes. She had seen Lagos only in movies: tall buildings, expensive cars, women wearing wigs that cost more than her father's church building. This was the life she wanted. This was why she came to this bustling city. Cynthia wasn't interested in small jobs like selling pure water or cleaning people's houses. No, she wanted something big. She had heard stories, many stories, about village girls who came to Lagos, met rich boyfriends, and became millionaires overnight. They started driving Range Rovers within months. They built houses for their parents in the village. This was the life Cynthia wanted. As soon as she arrived, she walked straight to a small hotel near the bus park. It wasn't a fancy hotel, but it was enough for a first night. She paid for a room and took a cold bath, washing off the village dust from her skin. Standing naked in front of the mirror, she smiled at her own reflection. "Lagos men, get ready. Queen Cynthia has arrived," she whispered to herself. The next morning, Cynthia dressed in her tightest dress, the one that made men in her village almost fall inside the gutter when they saw her. She wore red lipstick, sprayed a cheap perfume, and marched straight to the hotel manager's office. The manager, a man called Emeka, looked at her with surprise. "Good morning, sir," Cynthia greeted, her voice soft and sweet. Emeka, who had seen all kinds of girls in Lagos, couldn't help but stare at her. She was different. She was raw beauty, the type rich men were always asking him to find. "How can I help you?" he asked. Cynthia sat down, crossed her legs, and smiled. "Sir, I need your help. I want to meet a billionaire boyfriend. I'm ready to do anything. If you can introduce me to one, I will give you 20% of everything I get from him." Emeka coughed, shocked at her boldness. "Are you sure? Do you know what you are asking for?" "I am very sure," Cynthia replied. "I want to change my life. I want to help my parents. I am ready." "Wait," Emeka said. "How old are you?" "I just turned 20. "And you have never done this before?" "No, sir. I am still a virgin. I have never slept with any man before, but I am ready to do this if that will change my life and that of my parents." Emeka's eyes widened. "Virgin? At 20? In this Lagos? That's rare." He leaned back in his chair, thinking. A virgin this beautiful? Billionaires would rush her like suya meat. "Your parents know you are here for this business?" "No, sir. They think I came to look for a cleaning job. My father is a pastor. My mother sells akara. They won't understand. They are aware I am in Lagos. I told them I was traveling with a friend to Lagos to find menial jobs to do to sponsor my education. They don't have any choice because of our financial situation. I never told them I would be doing this, and they never asked to see the friend I was traveling with, but I am an adult and mature enough to decide for myself." Emeka shook his head. You are too innocent for this city. Lagos is not your village. Men here are dangerous." Out of pity, Emeka made her an offer. "Why don't you work here in the hotel? With what you've told me, I would advise you to take a job in our hotel here as a cleaner. We pay our cleaners 70,000 naira on a monthly basis, but with your condition, I will be paying you 100,000 naira if you agree to take the position. We can promote you to a secretary position when our current secretary leaves for school in 3 months' time. You will be sleeping in our staff quarters and also have free food for you. After 1 year, you will save enough to go back to school." Cynthia smiled politely, but her mind was already made up. "Thank you, sir, but I didn't come to Lagos to clean toilets." Emeka sighed. "All right, it's your choice." He paused, then said, "There's one man who has been asking me for a beautiful virgin girl. His name is Obi. He's rich, very rich. But what?" Cynthia asked quickly. "I don't know much about him. His money comes fast. Too fast. And rich men in Lagos," Emeka's voice dropped, "they can be dangerous." "I will be careful," Cynthia said. "Just connect me." That evening, Emeka called Obi. The young billionaire man drove into the hotel compound in a Rolls-Royce, his gold wristwatch shining brighter than the streetlights. When Obi saw Cynthia, his smile stretched from ear to ear. She was exactly what he wanted. They sat in the VIP lounge of the hotel, drinking expensive wine and laughing like old friends. Emeka watched them from a distance, worried but helpless. Before they left, Emeka pulled Cynthia aside. "Cynthia, listen to me," he whispered. "You are like my younger sister now. Be careful with this man. You don't know what's in his heart. Money can be dangerous. Cynthia, you are beautiful and the taste of every successful young man, no doubt about this, but please, you need to be extremely careful. This path you've chosen to follow is risky, and you can't see through the hearts of men. Even though you said what you want is not prostitution but a serious relationship with a billionaire young man, I can't guarantee your safety with Obi. I know little about him. I don't know the major reason he wants to date a virgin, and I don't know the source of his wealth, but please try and be safe, take extra caution, study him, and raise an alarm if there's any strange behavior you notice. Remember you said you are the only child of your poor parents. Try and be safe," Emeka told Cynthia. Cynthia laughed. "Don't worry, Emeka. I know what I'm doing." Still, Emeka made them sign an undertaking. It stated that Emeka only introduced them, and if anything happened, he was not responsible. Obi also signed, promising to protect Cynthia. Emeka refused the promised 20%, saying, "I want nothing from this. Just stay safe." Cynthia's relationship with Obi was a perfect start. They quickly blended as if they'd been together for some years. That night, Cynthia followed Obi to his mansion. The house was bigger than any house she had seen before. The bedroom was like a palace. Gold, diamonds, and luxury everywhere. Obi treated her like a queen, calling her his treasure. When Obi finally discovered she was truly a virgin after their first night together, he was overjoyed. "I have waited for a girl like you all my life," he said, hugging her tightly. The next morning, Obi took Cynthia to a car stand and bought her a brand new Range Rover. Cynthia's heart danced with joy. This was the life she dreamed of, and she's already getting it. "Next, we will build your parents a house in the village," Obi promised. And I will send you to school, not university, but a special boot camp for cybersecurity. Cynthia could not believe her luck. In just one night, her life changed completely. All her village friends would envy her. Her parents would finally have a better life, she said to herself. As the days passed, Cynthia became the hottest babe in Lagos. Her phone never stopped ringing. Her beauty and show of her boyfriend's wealth often oppress other ladies. Other billionaires offered her gifts, cars, jewelry, even mansions, just to get her attention. But despite accepting those gifts, Cynthia remained loyal to Obi and refused to give the men the needed attention they wanted from her. Obi kept to his words, and they traveled together to the village and opened the befitting house he had built for her parents. Throughout the housewarming party, the villagers talked about how Cynthia was lucky to have changed her life and that of her parents within a few months of being in Lagos. Some women even insulted their daughters, who are of the same age as Cynthia, and threatened not to give them food until they are ready to also travel to Lagos and find a rich man that will change their lives like Cynthia did. As Cynthia and her parents were getting the money, none of them cared to do an underground check on him and know his real source of income. He had claimed to be an importer, without being specific about the goods he imports into the country. Her best friend, Amora, called one day. "Cynthia, slow down. Do you even know what Obi does for a living?" "He's an importer," Cynthia replied casually. "Importer of what?" "I don't know. And I don't care." Amora sighed. "Be careful. Money that comes too fast can disappear too fast, or bring disaster." But Cynthia wasn't listening. She often told herself she didn't have a problem with where Obi got his money as much as she was not involved in whatever he did. She had money, beauty, and power. What could possibly go wrong? She would soon find out. After 1 year of being together, Cynthia graduated from the boot camp as a professional in cybersecurity and felt her dreams in Lagos had been fulfilled. That night, as Cynthia danced alone in her mansion, drinking expensive wine and admiring her new life, something strange happened. When she entered her bathroom, she noticed her used menstrual pad was missing. "Maybe I threw it away without remembering," she thought, shaking off the feeling. But that missing pad was only the beginning of her nightmare. The following month, the same thing happened. Cynthia stood inside her bathroom, her heart beating fast. The small dustbin beside the toilet was empty. Completely empty. But just 2 hours ago, she had thrown her used menstrual pad inside it. She was sure. She remembered clearly because the bloodstain was heavy, and she had wrapped the pad in tissue paper before dropping it. Now, the pad was gone. The bin looked freshly cleaned, like someone had wiped it carefully. She stood still, listening. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Obi was not around, and the only maid that worked in the house was off duty that evening. Who entered her bathroom? Who took her blood? Her skin felt cold. She became afraid she couldn't place the mysterious happenings. Cynthia grabbed her phone and called Obi immediately. "Hello, baby," Obi's cheerful voice came through the phone. "Obi, did you come home today?" Cynthia asked, trying to keep her voice calm. "No, my darling. I'm at the office." "Why?" "Nothing, just. I thought I heard something," Cynthia lied. "Don't worry. Our house is safe. No thief can enter. Relax, my queen," Obi laughed. Cynthia forced a smile and ended the call. But her heart didn't relax. It kept beating faster, like a drum in a village festival. As Cynthia stood there, memories from her village came rushing back. She remembered old women telling stories about people who stole women's menstrual blood to do juju, dangerous rituals to control the woman's destiny. Once they have your blood, they have your life, the women used to say. But Cynthia had always laughed at those stories. They sounded like tales for scaring children. But now she wasn't sure if that's what's happening to her. Cynthia left the bathroom and went to the dressing mirror. She stood in front of it, brushing her long, natural black hair, trying to calm herself down. Maybe she had thrown the pad somewhere else and forgot. Maybe she was just tired. But as she brushed her hair, she saw something. A shadow, standing behind her in the mirror. She screamed and turned around. The room was empty. Her hands shook as she held the hairbrush tightly. "I'm just imagining things," she whispered to herself again. But the fear inside her heart refused to leave. That night, Obi came home unexpectedly. Cynthia ran to him and hugged him tight, like a lost child. "Baby, what's wrong?" Obi asked, surprised. "Nothing," Cynthia lied again. Obi held her face and smiled. "I have a surprise for you." He led her into the living room, where a brand new diamond necklace waited on the table. "Do you like it?" Obi asked. Cynthia nodded, but her mind was not on the necklace. Her mind was still inside that bathroom, thinking about her missing blood. The next morning, Cynthia waited for the maid to return. As soon as the maid walked in, Cynthia called her into the kitchen. "Did you clean my bathroom yesterday?" Cynthia asked. The maid shook her head. "No, madam. I didn't enter your room." Cynthia stared into the maid's eyes, searching for a lie. But the girl's face was innocent. "Are you sure?" Cynthia asked again. "Yes, madam. I swear." Cynthia nodded and dismissed her, but her mind was more troubled. If the maid didn't take the pad, and Obi didn't come home, then who entered her bathroom? Who took her blood? That afternoon, Cynthia dressed up and took a drive to Emeka's hotel. She hadn't seen him in weeks. When Emeka saw her, his face lit up with a smile. "Cynthia, my Lagos queen," Emeka greeted her. But Cynthia didn't smile. She sat down quietly, her hands shaking. "Emeka, I need to ask you something." "Anything, my dear." Cynthia leaned forward and whispered, "Do you know if Obi believes in juju?" Emeka's smile disappeared immediately. "Why are you asking that?" "Just tell me," Cynthia said, her voice trembling. Emeka rubbed his chin. "Obi is rich. Very rich. And in Lagos, money like that, it doesn't come from only business. Some say he has strong spiritual backing." Cynthia's heart sank. "Spiritual backing?" Emeka nodded. "Cynthia, many Lagos billionaires are not ordinary people. Many of them have secrets. Dark secrets." Cynthia left the hotel, confused and afraid. As she drove through the streets, she saw an old woman sitting beside the road, selling herbs. Something about the woman's face looked familiar, like someone from her village. On impulse, Cynthia stopped. She walked up to the woman. "Good afternoon, Mama," Cynthia greeted. The woman looked at her for a long time, then shook her head sadly. "My daughter, your spirit is troubled. Cynthia's mouth opened slightly. How did this woman know? Come, sit down, the old woman said. Cynthia sat down, and the woman took her hand, closing her eyes. Someone close to you has taken your blood, the woman said. Cynthia's heart almost stopped. How do you know? She whispered. I see it. Your blood is inside a black pot. And they are calling your name. Over and over. Tears filled Cynthia's eyes. Mama, what will happen to me? If you don't act fast, they will tie your destiny. You will become a slave, a queen in chains. Cynthia returned home shaking from fear. When Obi came back that evening, he noticed her face. Baby, what's wrong again? He asked. Nothing, Cynthia said, forcing a smile. But inside her heart, a war was going on. Should she confront Obi? Should she pretend nothing happened? Should she run away? That night, she couldn't sleep. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, while Obi snored beside her. She needed to know the truth. With her knowledge in cybersecurity, she took her laptop and started tracing Obi's transactions and his charts. She was able to trace Obi's transactions to a chain of ritualists who take advantage of women. She discovered the order of the secret courts Obi belongs to. They always look for young virgin women, start a relationship with them, and their wealth will start to increase the day they take the women's virginity. They also spend a lot of money on the women and their families but will never marry them because the destiny of the women had been taken. She saw several pictures of young women who had fallen victim and how they became very lean and almost turned to skeletons before they eventually died. When she further discovered that after the first night with the lady, they steal a used menstrual pad from their victims every month to renew the occult practice till their victims start to decline in weight till they die and look for other victims, Cynthia felt a sharp pain and began to shake. None of the families of their victims had been able to establish a case against them because of how they appeared to love them and provide them with their needs even after the deaths of their victims. Cynthia now understands why one of her used pads had been missing every month and confirmed what the old woman told her. She imagined if Obi could truly harm her despite all the love and how they've become so close. Cynthia felt she needed to find that black pot. At exactly 2 a.m., Cynthia got out of bed quietly. Obi was still asleep. She tiptoed out of the room and started searching the house. She opened cupboards, drawers, and even the kitchen freezer, looking for anything strange. Finally, she reached the storeroom. It was locked. Cynthia didn't have the key, but she remembered where Obi kept the spare keys. She found them, opened the door, and stepped inside. The room was dark and smelt of something foul, like rotten meat mixed with old herbs. On a small wooden table, she saw it, a black clay pot, covered with red cloth. Her knees became weak. She wanted to run, but her legs refused to move. Slowly, she walked towards the pot and lifted the cloth. Inside the pot was something wrapped in tissue paper, soaked with dry blood. It was her used menstrual pads with blood. Cynthia wanted to scream and call for help, but it died in her throat because of fear. She covered her mouth with both hands, her body shaking violently. She was still contemplating whether to carry the pot and smash it on the floor to free herself and run away, but as she stood there, shaking, she felt a hand on her shoulder. She turned sharply. It was Obi. "Looking for something?" Obi asked, his face calm but his eyes cold. Cynthia's mouth opened, but no words came out. "I told you this house is safe," Obi said, with a soft voice. "Do you know why?" because everything inside it is under my control." Tears rolled down Cynthia's face. She summoned courage and confronted him. "Why did you take my blood?" she asked in a whisper. Obi smiled. "Because I love you. And I can't lose you." "That's not love," Cynthia cried. "That's prison." "No, my queen," Obi said, wiping her tears with his finger. "That's power." Obi led her back to bed and held her close, like nothing happened. But Cynthia didn't sleep. Her mind was awake, screaming and begging for help. Cynthia refused to sleep. As she lay beside Obi, she was staring at him throughout the night. Sometimes she wanted to go to the kitchen, grab a knife, stab him to death, and kill herself too, but she didn't have the mind and still doubted if Obi would have the mind to harm her despite all the promises of their future together. That night, Cynthia knew her end was near and remembered the advice of the hotel manager, Emeka. She realized she had failed to verify the business Obi was into because of greed. The next morning, Obi gave her another expensive gift, a diamond ring. But this time, Cynthia didn't smile. She knew the truth now. Her beauty wasn't her blessing. It was her curse. But out of greed, Cynthia still accepted the expensive diamond ring. As Cynthia stared at the ring, she knew her life had changed forever. The village girl who came to Lagos to chase dreams and became successful was now trapped inside a nightmare. Cynthia sat on the balcony, staring at the sky. Lagos was still alive and bustling, but inside her heart, everything had stopped working. Her smile, her joy, her dreams, all slowly fading away. She touched the diamond ring Obi gave her the day after she found the black pot. The ring was heavy. Not because of its size, but because of the fear it carried. Each time she looked at it, it reminded her that she was no longer free. She belonged to Obi now. Not as a wife, but as a prisoner. She looked at her cars parked at the garage and thought of the mansions she owned in Lagos, and tears dropped down her cheek. She had achieved her dream, but she's slowly dying. That night, Cynthia couldn't sleep again. Obi snored softly beside her, his chest rising and falling like nothing was wrong. But Cynthia could hear it, the whispering voice. It came from the bathroom. Soft at first, like wind passing through a crack. But slowly, the voice grew louder until she could hear words. "Cynthia, Cynthia, give yourself fully, or lose yourself forever." Her heart raced. Her hands became cold. Who was speaking? Was it a spirit? Or was it the blood inside the pot, crying out? Cynthia decided to search for answers. Obi had to keep detailed records of his victims, if any, that could explain further. She opened his wardrobe and pushed aside his expensive suits. At the back, hidden under old files, she found a brown leather diary. Her hands shook as she opened the first page. It was a list, names of women, with dates beside them. Some names had a red line across them. Others had a black dot beside them. Cynthia's name was the last on the list, and beside her name was today's date. "What does this mean?" Cynthia whispered, her heart pounding. Cynthia flipped to the next page. It was a story, written in Obi's handwriting. "Amaka was my first sacrifice. Her blood was pure because she was a virgin. The spirits accepted her without a fight. She loved me blindly, and I used that love to hold her soul. She died after giving me all her energy, but her spirit still serves me till today." Cynthia dropped the diary, her whole body shaking. Obi had done this before. Many times. She was not his first victim. The diary further confirmed her earlier discovery. Tears ran down her face. How could the man she loved be this wicked? How could he smile, kiss her, sleep with her, and still plan her death? Cynthia wanted to run away, but the door wouldn't open. She pulled and pulled, but it was locked tightly. Not just with the key, but with something invisible. Something spiritual. Cynthia, the whisper returned, stronger this time. It came from the floor, rising through her feet, climbing into her bones. "Let me go," Cynthia shouted, banging on the door. But the house didn't listen. Desperate, Cynthia ran back into the room. She grabbed her bag, ready to smash a window if necessary. But when she passed the mirror, she froze. There was a woman inside the mirror, staring back at her. The woman wore a white dress, her face pale, her eyes full of tears. "Help me," the woman whispered. Cynthia stepped closer, trembling. "Who are you?" "I was the girl before you," the woman said. "Obi took my blood. He took my spirit. Now I am stuck here, watching, waiting for the next girl." Cynthia's heart broke. "I will save you," she promised. The woman smiled weakly. "Save yourself first." Suddenly, Obi woke up, and when Cynthia turned back, it was Obi's hand she saw, collecting the bag from her. "Let me go. I can't live here with you anymore," she cried. "My love, stop acting drama. You are mine now. This love is inseparable. I can't let you go because you are now part of me. See, what you think you are seeing or hearing in this house is your own imagination. Be at peace with yourself and believe that I can't harm you because I would be hurting myself too if I ever did that." Cynthia was confused, but the glaring signs she had seen made her not fall for Obi's words. But it couldn't run away and eventually collapsed into Obi's hands. When they got to the room, Obi convinced her and swore with everything that he couldn't harm her. He lied that if Cynthia stopped imagining things, she would be at peace with herself. That night, they ended up being intimate as Cynthia foolishly believed what she said despite the evidence staring at her. The following morning, Cynthia started crying and imagined how she played into the hands of Obi, how she believed him last night despite the evidence before her, and how she ended up being intimate with the person that's killing her. A few months later, Cynthia started noticing a decline in her health. No matter how she ate, she continued to lose weight, and every hospital she went to told her nothing was wrong with her from the various tests conducted. Her big backside and boobs have reduced so much within 1 month that it's becoming difficult to recognize the Queen of Lagos as she was popularly called. As Cynthia sat in the living room, she accepted the fact that she had fallen victim and Obi had used her to renew his wealth. She took a mirror, looked at herself, and started crying when she remembered how she used to be. She couldn't go out during the pandemic and became a shadow of herself within just 2 months of the illness. One evening, she took a kitchen knife and decided to end it all, but Obi came back on time and quickly grabbed her to stop her from doing so. Obi didn't do this because she loves Cynthia. It would have been a disaster for him because their victims must not commit suicide. They are to suffer in pain till they die. It is the pain that will increase their wealth. Cynthia knew it was over for her and confronted Obi again. "I thought you loved me. What did I do to you that you decided to end my life to enrich yourself in this manner? Why, Obi?" Obi denied what Cynthia said and swore with everything and said she was losing her mind. The following day, He took her to parents in the village who were shocked upon seeing their beautiful and famous daughter in such a terrible condition that she became unrecognizable. But Obi said he had tried everything possible to find a cure for her strange illness, but nothing was working, and he brought her to the village for them to find a spiritual solution to it. Before he left, he gave them 10 million naira in case they needed to buy drugs. When Cynthia woke up the following day and regained some strength, she narrated everything to her parents: how she was introduced to Obi by a hotel manager called Emeka, whom she now accused of being a colleague of Obi, and how she found out about the business Obi was into. Her parent wanted to take action immediately, but his wife convinced him to focus on getting treatment for their daughter before going after Obi and Emeka. Despite the several drugs from the hospital and a local herbalist who claimed he had killed the spirits invoked in her body, Cynthia's health continued to deteriorate and worsen by the day. After 5 months of pain, Cynthia eventually lost it all. On her deathbed, she became unrecognizable as she turned into a mere skeleton and lost all her beauty. She regretted the path she took and blamed her parents for not correcting her and asked about the source of Obi's wealth when he was given money and properties. She wished she could turn the hands of time and accept the job offer from the hotel manager, grow slowly, and still have life. Cynthia died, leaving everything she thought she had achieved through Obi. She left everything behind and passed through pains before she finally died, leaving her parents, whom she claimed to love, behind. Her death and burial were a lesson for the villagers as the news of how she was used by her billionaire boyfriend spread throughout the village. The women that had beaten and insulted their daughters and told them to be like Cynthia apologized to them and regretted ever admiring such wealth. After her burial, with the help of the community chief and some groups of lawyers from the community, they arrested Obi and Emeka and charged them to court for ritual killings. At the trial, Emeka argued his case that he was never part of what transpired between the late Cynthia and Obi. He presented the undertaking they signed and was eventually freed as there was no evidence linking him to the case. When Cynthia's parents presented the case with the mass of evidence contained in his diary that Cynthia handed over to them before she died, Obi couldn't defend himself and was sentenced to life imprisonment despite his wealth and his connections. As Emeka was taken away from the court, he vowed to return and deal with Cynthia's parents for destroying him despite all he did for them, which he believes should be enough to pay for the death of their only child. Inside the prison, Obi made friends with the prison warden and fellow prisoners. He connived with the prison officer whom he had bribed and began planning his escape. He eventually succeeded after fellow prisoners dug a tunnel and escaped from the prison after spending 1 year in prison. Unknown to Cynthia's parents that Obi had escaped from prison, they were still at peace that justice had been served. They heard a knock on their door that evening, and as Cynthia's father opened the door, Obi wasted no time and shot them multiple times and left immediately. When their neighbors heard the sound, they rushed in and met them in the pool of blood. They rushed them to a clinic nearby, and Cynthia's father managed to tell them it was Obi who came from prison to shoot him and his wife, who is now dead. The following day, Cynthia's father died too, leaving everything they thought they had achieved from Obi. Their neighbors reported the case to police, and Obi was eventually rearrested while trying to escape from the country. He was rearraigned in court and sentenced to be killed by a firing squad after a second trial in the court. Obi was killed 2 days after, and his evil ended with him. Unfortunately, he refused to mention other members of his cult group and followed their vows of keeping the secret of other members even when he was dying. As Emeka sat in his office, he reflected on how the whole thing started and his advice to Cynthia and how she told him he didn't come to Lagos to clean toilets. She achieved her aim of being a rich and beautiful lady, But she lost herself and that of her parents she claimed to love in the process. As Emeka was overwhelmed with the story, she made a vow never to link any young lady with anyone again and believed other young ladies would learn from Cynthia's story and take life slowly. If you like this story, comment, like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more interesting stories. I will like to read your view about this story.